Good morning again, everyone. I think we can start. Warm welcome again to this training. We recall that yesterday we went through the NSDS guidelines 3.0 in more details, and we had another presentation on how Sasha 2 can be mainstreamed into the NSDS guidelines 3.0, as well as the RSDS. After these presentations, we had presentations from countries, very rich concrete examples and sharing of experience from Cameroon and from Uganda, which gave actually very practical experience, good practices and challenges, and how they have gone through the challenges to overcome them. We also had very good discussions from other participants, from countries, from experts that also completed or complemented what we have discussed through the NSDS design and implementation using the new NSDS guidelines. Today's session, we focus on the tools that can be used during the design and the implementation of the NSDS, but also the regional strategies for the development of statistics. We have a presentation on the ADAPT, which will be done by Rajiv. Following will be the presentation on statistical capacity monitor, which will be presented by Julia and Guglielmo. And also we have a presentation on the integration of geospatial data and official statistics, where we will introduce the guidelines on integration of official statistics and geospatial data, as well as practical tools, which will be presented by Grid 3. So today's sessions, you can see that they are complementing what we have learned yesterday, and how can these tools be used. Of course, some of the tools like ADAPT, you will have the necessary information on how it can be used throughout the process of the NSDS and the RSDS. And if there is any need for more detailed training, we will be happy to discuss and see how we can take this forward. So without further ado, I would like to invite my colleague, Rajiv Ranjan, to present the ADAPT tool. Rajiv, you have the floor.
Thank you, Philip, and warm welcome to everyone. Let me know if you can hear me well. Just a show of thumb would be okay. I'm going to share my screen so that I can make the presentation. And maybe if the time permits, then we can also spend some time in looking at the tool itself. So let me share my screen, and I hope you can see the first slide, which is the introduction slide. And I'm trying to make it a presentation mode. Should be okay now. So you can see the slide, right? Great.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. As Philip said, my name is Rajiv Ranjan. I lead the innovation team at Paris 21. The team works on the technology side of data, as well as we work on software development. And this is one tool that we have developed and is in use in many countries since 2016, and been proven very useful and helpful in the NSDS process. It's called ADAPT, short form for Advanced Data Planning Tool. So as you can see, this is the agenda that I have outlined here for this presentation. I'll give an overview about the tool itself, then what exactly are data gaps. We will spend some time about that, and then data plans. The plan to produce data which is required by policymakers. So that's where the third point comes in. And then if there is some time remaining, then we will also look at some of the tools and also finally, I'll present some resources which then can be accessed later for more detailed information on ADAPT. So the overview part includes giving the interests from two different communities that we all come from. One is the data producers community, and typically we can group them as questions from the National Statistical Office, or the NSO, on the left side of the screen, and the questions from the data planning community that the policymakers who are planning for everything, including data in a policy context. So what questions do we see mostly from the producer side or National Statistical Office side? We see questions like, what are the different results frameworks? That means, is the country has a national development plan, for example, and what are the indicators in the national development plan that we need to produce the data for? What are the new indicators which we need to produce? That means that these results chain or results framework, which are meant to provide a logical sequence of results, do they have indicators for measurement? And at what level of granularity we need to produce such figures? Does anyone produce them already in our country? I mean, for example, the education statistics may be produced also by Ministry of Education and also by the National Statistical Office. So why should two different agencies produce maybe same indicators? So can we not use or reuse the data which is produced already by one agency? So, but before you take that decision, you need to also know who are producing those statistics. So those kind of questions. Now let's take some questions from the data planning side. What kind of questions do they have, the policy making units in different countries? Can't they reuse existing data? Because data collection is an expensive process. So if the data is already there, then why do we need to conduct more surveys or new data collection exercise? What about new innovative sources? I mean, the cost reduction is everyone's agenda. So instead of doing a household surveys, which are very expensive, everyone knows that, can't we use some alternative data sources or maybe administrative data sources? And we can save on some costs. So can't someone else pay the bill? That is why a particular government agencies fund a data collection exercise? Can it be funded by someone else? So is there any possibility of resource mobilization around these topics of interest? And the first, the foremost question is, is it really important to measure? There are phenomenon which requires to be measured, and therefore you need to have a plan to produce indicators to measure those. But that a decision that the policymakers do need to take, because each measurement costs. So those questions are some of the questions which gets addressed by use of ADAPT. This is how typically ADAPT looks like when you look at the indicators page when you are in. What I'm showing here on the screen is a screenshot of ADAPT Tanzania. You see the list of indicators in the health sector here, for example, in their 5-year development plan. And when you basically click on each of them, you know what these indicators are with in terms of different kind of dimensions, measurement units, the disaggregation, and who is producing those observation values against these indicators, and so on and so forth in terms of distribution of responsibilities at different stages. So ADAPT, you see, allows for NSS or National Statistical System agencies to share information among themselves in a very transparent and efficient manner, in a sense that ADAPT is an online tool and it can be accessed wherever you have internet. So different ministries can access it from their locations, and then it can be managed online. Currently, it is used in more than 30 countries. It is endorsed by many multilateral partners. Currently, it is used in more than 30 countries.
Can you please mute your micro if you are not talking? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Again, I just want to repeat it that this is a free application hosted on the cloud, so you don't have to pay any license fees or any fees to use it. You don't. And it's hosted on the internet on a cloud infrastructure, so you don't really need to buy a software or a hardware or a computer to run this application. This slide gives a bit of a the background about how it works, and as you can see on this diagram, on the left side you have public policies. Public policies represent the demand, that is demand for data. Public policies on, for example, health, education, they all require data to be managed and monitored continuously. And the way to do that is through indicators in the center top. But then the same indicators or the observation values of those indicators are then supplied by different data sources. It could be a household survey, it could be administrative records, it could be non-traditional data sources like citizen-generated data or big data. Different data sources are possible, and the demand and supply then compared at the indicator level to discover if there are data gaps. Data gaps are represented in the center, and data gaps can be of different kinds of data gaps, like absolute data gaps. So there is no data about a particular indicator. Or if there is data about the indicator, maybe it is not available in required disaggregation. Maybe it is not available in required geographic representation. And the third, that it may be not available in required frequency. So all to fill these data gaps, what you need to do is then to come up with data plans, which can include the resources, the kind of skills and knowledge which is required, and the management aspects of those data plans. So this is the theory behind how ADAPT works. It can be used to assess the sustainable development goal readiness, as in we know that there are 232 indicators, and whether we have the required observation values or not, it can be assessed. The national development plans can be assessed too. The sectoral data plans can be assessed too. The additional advantage of using ADAPT is that it also allows you to monitor the execution or implementation of the data plans. So that means once the data plan or the NSDS, National Strategies for Development of Statistics, is prepared, then it can be monitored while it is in implementation using ADAPT. So with ADAPT, you can map and analyze data supply and demand. So this is a summary slide which basically lists what ADAPT offers. It identifies different kind of data and capacity gaps. It also accommodate possibilities of getting data from different sources and reuse of data to kind of fill the relevant data gaps. And then it also helps to do the data planning and its monitoring. So what are data gaps? So you see the questions that we have here is to understand that where do the data demands come from, and also where the data supplies may come from. So you see there are some examples here on this slide. National development plans. I mean, I mentioned this about before, the sub-national development plans, sectoral development plans. All these development plans, the policy have the demand for data. And on the right side, you see the data supplies, the possibilities of their coming from censuses and surveys. They can come from registers and administrative records. They could be mixed sources, and also in some cases, maybe other data sources. But what ADAPT actually helps you is illustrated on this page. On the left side, you have the demand side, and on the demand side, what we can do is we can see there are overlaps in terms of demand. So, for example, same indicators are required from different agencies, those kind of stuff. Also, whether there is a specific dimension to observe in demands. For example, if there are gender sensitive indicators required in policies, and then if so, then across all policies, if there is a marker available. So ADAPT allows us to do that on the demand side. On the supply side, it allows us to see the demands which are not met, supplies which meets the demand, and also supplies which are not demanded. So there may be some indicators that the national statistical system is producing which are not required in any policy document, or maybe it is not captured. So it is important to also identify those supplies which are not demanded. It also gives an idea about the proxy indicators. So for example, a particular indicator is required, but maybe the production cost is so high that we may have to go to some sort of a proxy indicator, and which then would be used in lieu of the actual indicator. So those can be identified using ADAPT. And of course, it can allow us to see that if an indicator is already produced, can it be used for measuring other phenomena in other policy documents and logical frameworks. Okay, let's try to see to the next slide. Yeah, so we go to data plans now, and quickly, data plans are a generic name for different plans which tries to produce the data, or which has a plan to produce the data as per different requirements in a country context, and particularly for a country in Africa, for example, not only the indicators which are required in National Development Plan, but also indicators in SDGs are priorities. Indicators in the African Union plan is an important consideration. So different data plans I mean, different policies require data. I'm sorry about the noise. If you can hear that. Um, so data plans can then again be organized by some sort of results chain. You can see that the green part that is there in the screen denotes the activities, which then leads to some outputs, and then the outputs will lead to outcomes, and outcomes will lead to impact. And this is the logical flow of results that you can see in a typical data plan. And all these different stages may have indicators. So a typical NSDS may have indicators to measure its progress at multiple levels. ADAPT allows you to have indicators for NSDS and other data plans to be monitored constantly. So you can capture different information from different data plans, like the metadata, the results chain. You can also do mapping of different data plans, identify activities and indicators against each activity, and cost of each activity. And you can monitor three things in data plans, like the activities status, whether they are ongoing or completed or discarded. The activity progress, that is like if there is an indicator value against an activity, then you can measure that also. And then the budget status. So if an activity is going to cost, let's say, $30,000, 20% is coming from FCDO or USAID or a donor, and then the rest is coming from the national budget. Those can be also constantly monitored using the tool. So maybe I can show the application in a bit, but before I do that, this is the link that I'm going to use. But give me a moment to share with you different resources that we have online for the ADAPT's related information. I'll share these links later in the chat, and also possibly you will have access to the slides, and then you can see these later at your leisure. So how to obtain support on ADAPT? You send an official request to PARIS21@oecd.org. You can mark me a copy on it, or you can reach out to any other contacts to ask for support on ADAPT. This is free, and for national statistical offices. They are typically the administrators of ADAPT in a country context, where other entities in the NSS can also participate. So I'll stop here now for a quick round of question and answers, if there are any. If not, then I will move for the demonstration.
Thank you very much, Rajiv, for this very interesting and clear presentation on ADAPT. I'm sure there will be questions. Please raise your hand, ask questions. I can see already one question from Emmanuel. Please, Emmanuel, go ahead.
Thank you, and good morning to everybody. And thank you, Rajiv, for the presentation. My question is just a short one. I want to know how long this ADAPT or ADAPT has been in existence. And you mentioned also the fact that we have 30 plus countries currently using them. I know if you take in terms of countries, we have a lot more. 30 is just an infinitesimal proportion of the total number of countries that we have. So I want to know, since when was this developed and the countries that are currently using it, if you can give us a few of them. The sample you show, I saw Tanzania. So my guess is that Tanzania is one of them. So this is just a brief question that I want to ask. Thank you, and over.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Let's wait for a few more questions if I can have, and then we can answer collectively.
Yes, I think Rajiv can go ahead and answer Emmanuel's question while we are waiting for other questions as well. I can see another question on the chat.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Can you share the experiences of the countries that are using it and how successful and useful it has been? This is from Gloria Akoto.
Okay, thanks. Perfect. I also see another question, Salome. So maybe I'll start with the first question. And Emmanuel, the tool has been, I mean, it, like all software applications, they start with a prototype, then they go through the pilot exercises, and then they are rolled out. Though the tool started being developed from 2016 onward, the real use started happening a couple of years later. And I totally agree that 30 is not a big number, but it takes almost like 3 to 5 months for a country to start seeing value in using ADAPT. Now, in terms of countries have used ADAPT in multiple ways. In some cases, in the beginning, actually, many countries used it to assess their readiness against the requirements of sustainable development goals. So, for example, they had all the indicators preloaded in ADAPT from SDGs, and then they went indicator by indicator to answer questions like whether it is relevant for the country or not, whether the observation value is available in the country or not. If so, then is it available in required disaggregation? If so, then who is producing this indicator? What is the frequency of production? So that gave some insights about countries' readiness assessment. And apart from countries, it was also used by UNSD, United Nations Statistics Division, to assess countries' readiness directly. And that is not counted in these 30 plus numbers. So it's because it was an institutional user. But yes, there is a scope for the numbers to increase. And we are hoping that from this group today, we may get some new interest from countries who would like to go for it. And we, like as Paris21, we are open for countries to try and test it. And, as per our resources, we then select a couple of countries to support it directly. So that's how we do that. And this is how we have the numbers. In terms of experience, I guess many countries who are using it would vouch for it directly. I mean, I'm sure that in the audience today, we have some countries who are users of ADAPT. Tanzania, you are right. In Africa, there are many countries. Rwanda has been one of the early pilot countries where we tested the product. There are many other countries that are using it, and then it requires a bit of an upstream work to enter the data, for which we actually provide a support to hire a local consultant in a country who can initially help to enter the data in the system for the reports to be useful for a country. In terms of security, yes, like all web-based applications, all our resources are hosted in a secure cloud-based environment. The data that is entered in ADAPT, though is not confidential in nature, it is encrypted. So it's secure in the data base. Then there are other questions I can see in the chat. Is it okay? Is it possible? There was one question that I see, that is it possible to use other government institution rather than NSO, or is it only for NSO? The simple answer is it is possible for other government institutions to use it. But it is helpful if NSOs are also involved, because typically they are the coordinator of the national statistical system, and they may have a wider knowledge about who are the producers of the data required by different policy frameworks. So, but there is no restriction as such who can use it or who cannot use it. In some cases, we have seen the planning institution, the government entity responsible for national development planning, are the users, not the NSOs so much. So that's a possibility. Can I go ahead with more questions, Philip?
Yes, please. There are other questions in the chat, if you don't mind.
Yes. So you mentioned that it is free cloud-based software. Stembail is asking, does that mean that NSOs or institution need to request for a workspace to use it, or can it be configured it on their own servers? At this moment, there is no load, or there is no pressure on countries to install it on their own servers. This application runs on a cloud-based environment, and different countries have their own URL. So, for example, Tanzania's ADAPT version is accessed by tz.adapt.paris21.org. Rwanda's version is accessed by rw.adapt.paris21.org. So each country gets a unique link or a URL for their instance of ADAPT. And that's how it is free. Otherwise, if you have to reinstall it on your machine, not only it is difficult to manage and maintain, it also is going to cost money to maintain the server. Then there is a question from Heidi. What are the important issues faced by NSOs to use ADAPT, and what are the main skills and competencies that they need for that, because there are only 30 countries that are using ADAPT. So it's okay. There are a couple of questions here, right? What are the important issues faced by NSOs to use ADAPT? Now, as I mentioned in one of my slides, that there are different ways or different entry points for ADAPT's use in countries. Some countries have used ADAPT for SDG readiness assessment. Some countries have used it for finding out what are the or who are the data producers in terms of national development plan indicators. Then also in the NSDS process, if a country is starting a new NSDS, then ADAPT can help to do the consultations online and do an assessment about the data availability. It can also help, fourth item is to monitor the existing data plans. So how far we are in terms of meeting the objectives set out in the data plans, and how are we doing. So that's the important issues faced by NSOs when they decide to use ADAPT. In terms of main skills, I mean, not a really a tool for software developers. This can be used by anyone who is in managing and monitoring NSDSs or in NSS coordinations work. So typically, in a National Statistical Office context, ADAPT is managed by the team who is responsible for either NSS coordination or NSDS development and its implementation. So no special skills required. In terms of 30 countries, because this is not a one-time use. I mean, it's a application which can be continuously used throughout the life cycle of data. So yes, it is growing. I mean, what I am giving you is an official number in a sense, because there is a way to use ADAPT also in a testing environment, and there are many countries, particularly from Latin America, that we have noted that they are using ADAPT as in a testing environment, and pretty much soon they will go to an official instance. I have another question. And by the way, I just wanted to also mention that you can download all the data that you have entered in ADAPT at your own level. So it's not that you do not keep the data. You can bulk download everything and also possibly create your own reports at your own end.
Yes, thank you, Rajiv. Maybe before you come back to the question on security and where the data are stored, we have a question from Sheila. She raised her hand, and can you go ahead, Sheila, please, to ask your question or comments or contribution? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Philip, and thank you, Rajiv, for the good presentation. I just want to attest to the fact that the tool was used in Zambia, but it was through the UNSD project on assessing readiness, or to the extent as a country we're ready to report on SDGs. I do feel a little sense of regret that the tool was used by the consultant, and I could have missed it, but I don't remember even told that this is the tool was being used. And perhaps with the introduction and with more information, could have seen how we would have continued to use the tool. But I do understand you have said we can then say it's not at country level that we use the tool, it's more at institutional level, which would be UNSD. And I just want to say that in terms of the process, it's a very useful process. It really helped us engage all the data producers and users. And I do recall we had a schedule to call each one of the institutions to come and tell us the status on the indicators, some actually knowing for the first time that they are supposed to produce that indicator. So I want to attest that I think it's a very useful tool, but we have not started using it. And I think I'll be more curious to know how exactly we would work with, because we just got the results from it. Apart from being used, it was being beamed and people were responding. And after that, it was used consultant. And what we have is the report. So I'm looking forward to how actually we can use ourselves. Thank you.
Thanks, Sheila, for the attesting. I know UNSD used it there, and that was for a very specific, narrow focused of SDG readiness assessment. But you are absolutely right. You can use it on your own. You just need to send Paris21 an email, and we would create an official ID for you, and then you can start using it. We can also provide training, and and we can also come up with a work plan for its implementation as we go forward. You just have to write an email attesting your interest, and we can then see according to the schedule how we can implement it. One important point, and I see this also in the question, I mean the chat from South Africa, is we do support countries in hiring a local consultant for a few days in the beginning after the training, introductory training, so that it is easier for countries to get the data in the system quicker, so that you can then see the results easily in terms of seeing its usefulness, because the data entry is not only is important. It's also a learning process, and that's why it takes a bit of time to see and identify which are the NSS entities who are producing what kind of data, and then with which kind of frequency.
Thank you very much, Rajiv. I think we also have some countries that recently used ADAPT in the NSS assessment process to design their NSDSs. I can see Lesotho here. Mrs. Nyefolo, if you don't mind, maybe you can share your experience using ADAPT on data gaps analysis when you were doing your assessment to design your NSDS. 2 minutes, please, if you can. Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay. Let's move.
Philippi.
Yes, please. Oh, yes, Paulina.
Nyafolo has internet connection, problem with the internet connection. She has been cut off.
Okay, thank you. Would you like?
Yes, but all I can say is that Lesotho has used ADAPT to do the assessment in preparation for the NSDS design. The data for the indicators was imputed by the MNE department with assistance from the local consultant. And then with that, the gaps were able to be identified. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pauline, for that experience. I think we can move to the second part of the presentation, and if needed, maybe we will have more discussions at the end of this part.
Yeah,
Rajiv.
Yeah, thanks, Philip. And if I have not answered anyone's query yet, please feel free to unmute yourself and come in. Because now when I share my screen, I can't see the chat window simultaneously. So please do so. What I have, you can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so this is how it looks like. Once you log in, you would find your name here, and you can sign out from here. There is a link to get into the back end of the system by site administration. You can see who all are the users of the system. You can also join a community of ADAPT users, and you can discuss among each other what are the problems you are facing and how can it be solved. Someone can come and help you. There is a link for the ADAPT manual here, and you can change the language by clicking on this button. So for example, you can go to French, you can go to Spanish, you can go to Russian. I mean, it depends on what you have selected in the background. This is an instance of for demonstration purpose. So it is called Demoland, as in demonstration land. What you see on top is different menu items in ADAPT. You see the policies or development policies, which are listed here. Then you see the log frames of the development policies, the logical framework, and then you would see the indicators which are part of the log frame of those policies. There are some indicators which may not have log frames, but may directly be part of policies. But that's fine. So you can see all the indicators here. The thing to note here is that in the indicator, against each indicator, you would have two parts of information. One is the demand side information, and another is the supply side information. So who is demanding which kind of indicator for which public policy? And on the other side, you would have the option to provide, so who is producing the observation value in what kind of disaggregation, what kind of geographic representation, what kind of frequency to meet the demand. So that is all in the indicator side. Then in the data sources, you would see all the sources of data that you have identified in the country. It could be household surveys, it could be all the administrative records, it could be mixed sources, it could be other sources. Then in this button called data plans, you can record all the data plans of the countries, including the NSDS, including the subnational data plans, if there are any. Including subsectoral or sectoral data plans, like health sector data plans, if there are any. And then finally, here in this button, you would see the reports. So I'll quickly go through each one of them and show you how they look like. I will not go into details, but this gives an overview about how the system behaves. So you see here, you have the policies for the Demoland, you have SDG, you have the health sector strategic plan, you have national socio-economic development plan of the country. You see whether the log frame is available, yes or no. So this is basically the list of different development policies for which you may or may not have a log frame. Log frame is basically a hierarchical set of actions that needs to be taken in order to meet the objectives of the policies. So if I go to log frames, I would see the log frames of these policies, and these would give us how the logic is organized. So for example, if I go to, I mean, of course, everyone is familiar with SDG log frame, but just to show you, there are 3 layers, right? Or 2 layers actually. One is, if I want to see it, you can see it here. So you have goals and then you have targets, and indicators are attached only at the level of targets. So if I want to see the levels, you see there are only 2 levels, goals and targets. And then the goals are listed here. So there are 17 goals, and under each goal, you can see how many targets are there. And this IE indicates whether there are indicators or not in this one. So you would see that there are indicators, but you won't be able to add the indicators in the log frame tab. You have to go to the indicators to add the indicators with each level of log frame. So this gives an order. So for example, if I click on this proportion of population below the international poverty line, so 1.1.1, then you would see that this is an indicator attached with the first target of the SDG. You see, and sorry, and you see the description of the indicator here with the metadata that you can see, the concepts, the rationale, the comment and limitation, stuff like those. And then you can see the disaggregation required. It is required every year. it is required at the national level of geographic coverage. What are the disaggregation? It is required by employment status, age, sex, location. So for example, this is the demand side. But if I go to the availability side, then you can see whether it is available or not. Sorry, applicability side. Availability side is here. And then I will edit this to show you that what you can see. So if I see availability, and if I have not said yes or no, that's something that needs to be done. So I click on yes, and you see if I say yes, then it says that what is the disaggregation in which it is available. What is the geographic coverage at which it is available. So the same thing is answered from the demand side, I mean, from the supply side. So you have the demand information here, and here in the availability, you have the supply information. So this is compared against each other, and then it gives a report about what is possible to be reported or what is not possible to be reported. And if something is not available, then that needs to be planned in the NSDS, in the next NSDS, or someone has to produce it in the NSS, maybe Ministry of Health or Education. This also gives a bit of a compliance score, like what is required and what is produced. And then you can also do a bit of a feasibility assessment. So can it be produced with the current resources? Can it be produced in the long run? So both the current feasibility and in the near future feasibility can be assessed. Then you can see the data sources side. The list of different data sources that country has. They are also kind of listing by different period. So for example, the health and demographic survey, DHS, for example, or the living condition surveys, national accounts. These are all different data sources which can then be used to provide the information on the supply side of indicators. Then you have the data plans, and data plans are basically where you have listed the national strategy for development of statistics, as well as other data plans. For example, Ministry of Health's program of work for data or statistics, or Demoland's national strategy for development of statistics, as I said. You can also summarily see their funding status and their implementation status. And then finally, you can see the reports. There are two functionalities in the reports. One is like normal basic reports, and the other is custom reports, advanced reports. And you can create your own queries for advanced reports. I will not go into the details, but just to show you that you can see the reports in this way. You can download them for inclusion in your plans and other places. You can finally, I can show you the site administration that you can go and set the language, currency, the different organizations and departments within organizations. You can download the data in bulk. You can upload the data in bulk. And the global policies and log frames like SDGs, AU 2030, they are all pre-filled here. So for example, if I go to log frames, for example, so you would see all the pre-filled information here. So you see the SDG is preloaded, and the regional policies will appear here to be loaded as well. So it's not the policy, actually, it is in the log frame that you would see the African Union 2030 agenda. So and why this is important is that these are global or regional. In the regional, you see agenda 2063. Sorry about that. And then depending on which region is using the application, you have different kind of East African countries. Vision 2050 targets are also here, and then you can simply clone them and map it with your national development plans and see that they can be answered nicely here. Before I close my presentation, I just wanted to show you that you can go to adapt.paris21.org, and here you see a button called Try It Now, and you can then create your own instance for trying the current version of ADAPT. So you can get familiar with the tool, but if you need help and support, please do write to us. We are happy to support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rajiv, for trying to go through the whole models of ADAPT in so short time. It was clear, quick, of course, because of the time. So if you have questions, please raise your hand or send your question in the chat, or just activate your micro and go ahead, ask questions. So Rajiv has shared the link to the website, so you can try it and navigate yourself and try to understand better. And as Rajiv said, if you have any question, please do send an email to us, and we will react. I would just add that those countries who used ADAPT during their assessment data gaps analysis can attest on the usefulness of this tool. Not only that it helps you to get the level of the gaps, but also helps you to align your national statistical system production and the data needs from policy demand. And this has a link with what we were talking yesterday and the first day on how do you try to align the NSDS development process and the user demand. So this is a tool that will really help you to make sure that you are responding to data demand and not just produce data just to be produced. Josephine, you raised your hand. I think you have a question or a comment. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Philip. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, everyone. Thank you again to the presenter. I was paying so much attention to see, remember my expectation from the earlier comment I submitted. I think it has highlighted me so much, and I'm looking forward to doing it. The only thing I'm looking at is it's a more, I don't know how user-friendly it is, in that if I have to do it on my own, or it is a more collaborative kind of arrangement where I need to sit with a number of stakeholders, or I have to do it on my own. That's what I was looking at. That's my comment. Otherwise, it looks to be a very good tool from the presentation that I've seen. So I'm looking forward to do it myself and see how it works. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Josephine. Any comment, Rajiv? On
Yeah, no, thanks. No, this is good actually that you are trying to do it on your own, and I can vouch for this that you can use it on your own. But you know, the consultation process that you mentioned, I mean, for you know, for seeking information from the NSS, you may have to talk to other entities in the NSS, of course, to get the information about their production and situation in terms of data that they are responsible to produce. So not for using the tool, but to get the information, you may need to consult others. But even there, you can also do it online. So you can add them as a user of the system, and then they get invited to use the ADAPT, and you can control what they can add, what they can not add or change. So the last link that I shared, Josephine, that's the ADAPT sandbox creation. So you can create your own instance of ADAPT to test it. If you face any difficulties, you have the ADAPT user manual, you have the ADAPT community, and of course we are here to help you. So just to drop a line and we will reach out to you. And also there is a request for my email ID in the chat. I will anyway do it here. So in case you need to reach out to me later, please feel free to write to me an email.
Great. Thank you very much, Rajiv. And you already have the contact email from Rajiv on the chat. Please feel free to send your request and any question you might have, even when you go through the ADAPT itself. You may have some questions. Please don't hesitate to send your request to Rajiv's email. And I'm sure he will be happy to come back to you with the answers. I can't see any further questions or comments on this. And if you agree with me, I think we can go to the next presentation.
Thank you, Philip, and thank you everyone for participating in this presentation. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Rajiv. And please feel free to react to this presentation. We will be happy to come back to you. Thank you, Rajiv, for the very good presentation. And thank you all for your questions and contributions. We now move to the next presentation. And the next presentation will be on the statistical capacity monitor, which will be presented by Julia and Guglielmo. And without further ado, I will invite Julia to proceed with the presentation. Julia, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Philippe. Warm welcome again from my side. I'm Julia Schmidt. I'm a policy analyst at PARIS21, working on the statistical capacity monitor and how to measure statistical capacities. And I will quickly hand over to my colleague Guglielmo to introduce himself while I will start the screen sharing. Please.
Thanks, Julia, and good morning and good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to meet you, even though virtually. And I am Guglielmo Zappalà, and I work as a consultant at PARIS21 in support for the development of the statistical capacity monitor, and I'm really looking forward to this presentation.
Can you quickly confirm that you see the screen in
Yes.
full? Yes, great.
Yes.
So in our presentation today, we would like to take you on a journey to measuring statistical capacity and introduce to you our database and monitor that is publicly available. And the presentation will have the following structure. We give an overall introduction, and then we prepare 2 exercises. We see how much time we have, but we really want to keep this as interactive as possible. So first of all, why do we have in PARIS21 a statistical capacity monitor? The idea was to make sure we have a one-stop place where we can measure statistical capacity in developing and developed countries. It is a platform that allows you to monitor, to track progress, and to analyze different countries, but also regions, and to match a bit the capacity needs in terms of how to structure your own programs and structure your planning, for example, to understand a bit better what is the relative needs of your country or your region vis-a-vis others in the world. So as I said, it's possible to do comparison across geopolitical levels, so regional, sub-regional, national, but also income levels, SIDS. And there's a channel to propose innovative indicators. So we work closely with experts from the community and countries to be able to capture as much as possible the reality. Just a quick overview. So this is how the page looks like. You see here, it's a screenshot of our page. We will go there later. You can browse through different indicators. You can also directly enter a window to look at the region or find the data. And as I said, the purpose is to have a tool for analysis, to be completely transparent. So it gives a comprehensive overview of a large variety of those measures, including the metadata and definitions and methodology. And it also should allow to help coordinate for funding. How it works. So these indicators are organized along the statistical value chain, which is a bit adapted to make it easier. So we have indicators measuring the planning, the production, the dissemination, the use, and the investment. So we have indicators, for example, on the financing to statistics and data. We have indicators that attempt to measure statistical literacy and use. And we also have indicators that focus on the dissemination. So for example, data portals or press releases released by the statistical office. This is a quick overview of the content. So in total, we have 89 indicators to offer. 23 of them is what we call PARIS21 internal indicators, which are completely conceptualized, collected, and disseminated by ourselves. And then there are 66 external indicators. That means we also display the World Bank indicators, the ODIN indicators, the IMF, UNSD, so the SDG ones that pertain to statistics, which we are the custodian of. So there are 3 indicators. And we do update them annually in a sequenced manner. And we have a dissemination calendar available on the page, as well as the data, of course, the code book and the methodologies, and everything is open source and free and downloadable in an XLSX format. I want to go a bit further into, I mean, we said it's the value chain, but the PARIS21 indicators, they currently, we have some new indicators coming up, and I want to also show you what the current focus of these indicators is. So as I said, we have indicators on planning. We, for example, evaluate whether a statistical plan is implemented or the current status of your NSDS. We also have financing indicators on donor support in terms of total commitments to statistics, and this is further broken down. We have some indicators on quality assurance with regards to UNFPUS. We have indicators on use, and it's a new or a relatively innovative indicator on using a machine learning algorithm to parse through text and detect how the reference to statistics or which reference to statistics can be observed in policy documents, and a similar methodologies also apply to the statistical literacy indicator. In the future, we have already started working on some of those areas. We have indicators on coordination. In the past 6 months, we put together a high-level task team, really structured around the idea of conceptualizing, operationalizing, and then measuring coordination inside the NSS. We will also work now this coming 6 months on legal frameworks and assessing them, their quality, and not only the law, but also the other legal decrees linked to it and amendments. And then we further want to focus on innovation, on sectoral statistics related to gender, on data governance, and on skills and competencies. And we do this not only with a large variety of partners in the measurement space, such as the World Bank, FAO, the UN, UNDP, and but we also do this with countries specifically. So we're really trying to have a participatory approach to go about these new measurements. The last slide, and then I will hand over to my colleague for further details, is we will speak about who is this index or indicator for, and we try to go about it in a bit of a different way. So we usually see 3 types of profiles assessing our indicator or accessing it. One is the program design or planning expert, and this has to be understood as a wider definition of that. So we see this for sure as a NSO-DG office or the Planning Commission, but also international organizations, development cooperation agencies, regional commissions who access the SEMSM program management tool. So we encourage it to understand a bit the current level and dimensions of statistical capacity, and it might support in the planning and design of strategies. And it's handy that we can provide with time series and bar charts for example, presentations that you can directly take the download the picture, the graph from the website. Then we have 2 more profiles that we observe. One is the statistical capacity expert. This is also in the NSO, but also mostly found in training institutes or academia or the IOs, which is a different idea. They use the SEM as a knowledge bank and really try to understand the status of statistics in the world, look more at the cross-cutting picture, compare countries or regions on different dimensions, and try to gain insights into the resilience of statistical systems. I mean, that's our experience. And then there's a public sector governance expert, which is usually from IOs or DEFCO agencies, trying to use the SEM as a policy compass. So if you look at the statistical policy, how could the SEM support this in terms of institutional reforms or governance systems? And tries to correlate, for example, statistical capacity with governance indicators to see whether there's a relation. I think, yeah, Guillermo, I think this is, I will go take the slide on and then over to you. So what we want to emphasize is while doing all this work, we really rely on partners, as I said already, and not only regional partners, international organizations, but also countries through all the stages of the work. So we have a disseminating community, we have conceptualization partnerships, specifically with the World Bank, FAO, and Open Data Watch, but we also have a validation and user community. So what we do is UNESCO uses the monitor for their vision framework of the Agenda 2030. We do give trainings also as part of the NSDS as workshops, as we do now, but also in collaboration with statistical training institutes. And we look forward to, of course, broaden these communities. So with this, hand over to Guillermo. And yeah, thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much, Julia. If you don't mind, I will ask you to keep sharing the screen. And in the second part of this presentation, I'll try to make a more practical step into the monitor, so how the monitor looks like. And then hopefully, if we have time, we have prepared 2 exercises so that you can practice yourself and we can have a direct and easy interaction between and gain some insights from a US user's perspective. So there are 3 main ways to access the monitor, as we have seen earlier, that we identify differently as country page, indicator page, and CD 4.0 page. So the first one, the country page, allows to assess for a single country the values for a different set of indicators that you can customize, of course. And you can also compare these values with aggregates for sub-regional, regional, and at the global level. And you can also customize this choice so that you can, for a given indicator, assess the values and understand how your country or any country you're interested in compares with respect to others. the indicator page focuses on one single indicator. It provides an easy and accessible way to visualize a snapshot of the world for the state of the art of a given indicator, and you can also compare the time trends for the countries, and most importantly, you have all the full documentation related to the metadata and methodological information for that indicator. And finally, you can also explore the CD 4.0, the capacity development 4.0 structure, and look around the clusters of them to see which indicators are belong to each of them. Thanks. So this is the next slide provides a snapshot of the home page of the monitor that we will practice later on together, but this is just to have a visual inspection of these three different ways. So from the left to the right, you have the so-called country page in green that you can access and choose a country, then the indicators page that you can scroll and pick up the indicator you're interested in, and finally go through the indicators on the through the CD 4.0 structure. So let me make a brief description about each of these pages. Let's start with the country page. In the next slide is summarized a snapshot of how it looks like. As you can see, this is in the case of France. You are once you select your country you're interested in, you are given a set of indicators that can be customized. And then you can compare quite easily how a country is performing with respect to the sub-regional levels, the regional levels, and finally the global levels. And of course, you can always download, as already said, all of this data that are open source and customize the selection of data you're interested in. This is what we will further investigate in the exercise 1. In exercise 2, we will rather focus on in the indicator page, which here we provide as an example for the use of statistics index, which is a PARIS21 indicator. And you can see that it presents straightforwardly the description of the indicator, what the definition of the indicator is, and then it allows for an easy comparison with all the countries around the world simply by hovering around each country to reveal their values for a given indicator. And then we will further investigate the other visualization possibilities you have for this indicator through inspecting the time trends or choosing a peculiar subset of countries to compare. And most importantly, this page gives the access to the metadata and methodological information about which I would like to spend a couple of few words. In particular, in the next slide, we summarize the methodological information that we provide for all of the internal indicators. So for the PARIS21 indicators, we have developed this methodological note that summarizes and facilitates the users to understand what the indicator is. So how to interpret what each value means, where the data come from, how they are collected, and especially what is the relationship between the underlying data, raw data, and the computation of the indicator. And then we provide also some aggregation rules and describe how the aggregates are computed. More generally, we have a metadata structure aligned with the standards that provides for each indicator, so for both external and internal indicators, the standard metadata information regarding the short and long definition of the indicator. So whereas if you're just interested in understanding what an indicator measures, then there's the short definition. If you're rather interested in full interpretation of the indicator, this is what the long definition does. Finally, where the data come from, respectively, by providing information on the source and dissemination agency, and most importantly, the methodological background. So what each score means, and if we are talking about a binary indicator, a categorical indicator, a continuous value, or so. So let me conclude by saying that the monitor, of course, is in continuous evaluation as any database. So we are we aim at updating annually the data through the dissemination calendar, but of course we always welcome corrections and validations and suggestions from the users themselves, even outside from the dissemination calendar window. and we always report the potential errata and in a timely manner for the users to be consistent in the use of the data. So feel free, even yourselves, to reach out if by looking and investigating around the monitor you spot any error. And finally, again, we have quite an agenda for measurement, but we always welcome any kind of proposals and suggestions for new indicators, and the contacts are provided in the About section of the monitor. But let me stop here, and we can move to we have prepared 2 different exercises for you that so we would like to get to involve you as much as possible, and they will really talk about and cover specifically an exercise on the country page and the other one on the indicator page if will be time. So thanks a lot for your attention, and Julia, over to you again.
Thank you, Guglielmo. Maybe we stop here briefly and see whether there are any questions already at that stage. Given that I think we are well in time, we can maybe stop here a little bit. No, Philippe, I think that makes sense.
Yes, Julia, I think we can have some questions, comments on the conceptual framework of the statistical capacity monitor, on how the indicators are listed and how they are defined, and maybe before we move to the exercises and show how it is exactly done in the platform. I don't know if there is any question. Please raise your hand or just unmute yourself and comment, or send it through the chat. I think this is maybe very clear, and once you go through the exercises, the practical exercises, then we have more questions and comments.
That sounds good, Philippe. And I think we have enough time, so we will not do a classical Q&A in the end. We will really encourage you to jump in with questions, and they don't take long, so we have time after each of the exercises as well to accommodate any further questions. So let me go back to sharing my screen. And let me know if this is visible.
Yes, you can see it.
Great. So we would like to take you now with us to explore a bit what we call the country page, and compare your country on the basis of key indicators, customize the choice, and maybe retrieve some of the indicators. So the first step would be if you could go to this homepage. Maybe Guglielmo, you can also put it in the chat. It's easier, then everyone can click on it. And we proceed in a second when you all manage to open the homepage. Maybe you can give us a sign of hand, or Guglielmo can monitor a bit the environment.
Yes, feel free to use the chat as well. I'll be monitoring it. So if you have questions, you can also just write there.
Can everyone access it?
We can adopt the policy of adding a reaction or like a thumb up to make sure that we are all on the same page.
Yeah.
I believe I don't see reactions nor on the chat, but
maybe you can quickly say yes, or Philippe, we will just continue and see. Please raise your hand if you have an issue.
Yes, participants have already started indicating that they are fine with
Okay.
the link. So if you can go ahead and indicate if it's fine, yes or okay, or if you have any issue to access the link, please do indicate it. Thank you.
Perfect. And for those who cannot, it's not a problem. We have screenshots of everything, so it should be fine. So if you could see this homepage, then we would encourage you to click on the left window on region, country, or sub-region, the green window. And then you should see something like this, a map with a list of countries. And we encourage you to choose your own country. And you should land at something that looks like this. We chose France, but you should choose maybe the country you're interested in or your own country or a region. As you see, you can do that differently. And then what you should see is that you see a list of different key indicators that are structured based on the data value chain on the left side, planning, production, use. And importantly, this indicator list can be modified. So for example, you could here, if you click on this little pen, you can choose indicators that you're interested in. You will also see the comparison with the sub-region, the region, and the world. And just to explain a bit how these bars work. So here we have an indicator, for example, is your statistical plan implemented? Yes, France is implemented. So that is a yes or no question. And then what this means is 100% of the countries in Western Europe, which are 9, so the total 9 out of 9 have a statistical plan. And in Europe, it's also similar. So the total below is this shows you the total number of countries in the region, and then you have the percentage above. Is everyone able to do this? To see this overview and compare a bit the situation?
Yes, I think people are indicating that's fine. We encourage you to maybe select your own country and see even the information that are on your page, and maybe you can contribute even on how updating the values of the indicators that are at your own country page. Thank you.
Yes, and here you see what I just described. You can select the pencil and customize also the choice of indicators. So I would suggest we take some time and discover together. And then after some time, we could maybe if one or two of you want to share what they discovered or share comments, reflections on your indicator list, please feel free. So if you want to modify this indicator list, let's just go there. If you want to modify the indicator list that is here already indicated, that is this default, but you can modify it. You click on this pencil, which is the orange pencil, and then you should see something like this. So you should see a lot of indicators. Some of the default ones are ticked, and you can click on this remove all. So you remove the selection. At the default level, there are 8 selected, and then you can scroll through the different indicators. You see the data value chain here, and you can click on those indicators that you are interested in. So for example, here on the planning, you can go and see, okay, do I want to look at the National Statistical Council, whether there is one or not, or the statistical plan implemented, and the same you could do with the other areas of the data value chain to get a feeling for the range of indicators we could offer. And then you should be in the end with a different list that should look like this, or given your indicators, of course, that you choose, but it should be definitely your own chosen indicators, and then you should have values for your own countries or regions here. And we would really encourage if one or two of you want to maybe share what you see on your screen, or whether you think something is intuitive or not so intuitive. We're really happy if we could gather some experience.
Yeah, can we ask maybe Isaac? I think you have connected to the page. Can you share with us, please, what you are seeing from your end? Isaac, Nema, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great.
Yeah, I went straight to our indicators for Namibia, and yeah, I'm just looking at what we have and what we don't have. Like some of the things we are seeing that we don't have statistical society presence, but we have statistical plan implemented. So I can quite easily, go through the indicators as highlighted in the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Isaac. Maybe we can also hear from one more from participants. Yandiswa, please.
Sorry, Chair, I'm not following up. I went onto the page and I chose South Africa, but then I saw indicators for the entire continent. I see for planning the percentage of countries that have plans, and I'm not following for South Africa on its own. I'm struggling to get to it.
Oh, okay. Julia, please.
Maybe Julia can assist.
Yeah.
Yes. So I'm happy to go back. Maybe this is also, let's see where the situation is. So you can select South Africa here in the country bar. Is that possible?
Yes, I'm able to select South Africa.
And then
I see nothing else after that. I only see then I see that then I see the screenshot we have, but for the entire continent, not for South Africa.
Okay, that is a problem. Thank you for flagging that. We will go back to the system and report this. Should be a problem on the server.
Or it could just be me, Julia. maybe it's my problem, not the system's problem. I'm trying to work with my colleague to see if we can get to this.
Yeah, let us check, because we know the data is there. We have and we will show you how to download the raw data. But it could be very well that there's a problem on the server. So we will look into this, and we are happy to also touch base bilaterally afterwards. I see that Josephine has also raised her hand. You want to come in?
Yeah, I was able to pick for Zambia. And then I don't know whether it's the same experience with South Africa, but I can see there's a row or column where there's an arrow down showing Zambia, and then I have, I think, a comparison to sub-Saharan Africa. Then under there, for the first one, which is planning, it's showing statistical society presence. We have a no. And then we have statistical plan implemented, which is a yes. And then there are some figures on the sub-Saharan there. And then when it comes to production, we have overall score, data coverage and openness. Under the column where there's Zambia, it's showing 25.7. And then on use, which is statistical capacity indicator overall score, it's showing 52.2.
Great.
And then statistical retrace indicator level 1 is showing 7.4. Then the use of statistical index, it's showing 35.3. Then on investment, we have total commitment, which is an annual. It's showing 825, 579. Yeah, so I was able to do that. I don't know whether that is the correct information that we are supposed to be looking at or something different.
No, that is correct. So that shows, that means for Zambia, you have all it shows correctly. So that is how it should be. Then you could maybe, I mean, if you want, and we don't have to do this now, but as I said, we could modify the indicator list if you want to look at different indicators than those that we have set as a default. So you could play around a bit, and I'm sure there's also sometimes missing data because not all countries have indicators. This is not a composite indicator. I think this is important to say. This is really a toolbox for you to see what is relevant, and we are happy to connect bilaterally as well to discuss certain statistics with you, or discuss others that you maybe miss in the toolbox, and we should take up. So thank you, Josephine, for your contribution. Philippe, I think this is really nice, no? So I think it's a very
we have
successful...
Isaac. Yeah.
Yes. I just wanted to find out, because I'm not seeing the timeline. This data is for which period?
So this
I don't see the period indicated to say maybe this is 2020 or 2019 or so, or whatever.
Yes, that's a good point. And this is why I think we should move to the exercise 2 to discover the time series and the timeline. And I think this is the perfect entry point to switch to because you will see it, we show you it's a very pedagogical view now on the page, but if you dive into it, you will see that there's, it should be always for the most recent year we have it available, this overview, but you can see the correct timeline once we enter the indicator pages. So I see 3 more people raise their hands. How do we go about this? Philippe, should we take them and then we move to the next exercise?
Yes, please. We have 2 hands raised. We have Emmanuel and we have South Africa, Yandiswa. Maybe we can give them the floor and then we move to the next section. Yes.
Do I have the floor? This is Emmanuel.
Yes.
Yes, please, Emmanuel, go ahead.
Yes. In fact, I also did something and I want a little clarification. I clicked into Ghana and selected some indicators, and then with reference to Africa. And it gives me this details on NSO's organization. It says, yes, government statistical capacity 62.5, statistical society presence, yes, National Statistical Council, it says no, and that is rightly so. Statistical plan implemented, yes. SDG portal, yes. Data on access to water twice in last 6 years. Agriculture census, yes, because the last one was done 2015. Data on child immunization, yes. But what I'm not getting right here is the use of consumer price index base year. It indicates no, but I think it should be yes, because we've done a rebasing of consumer price a number of times. We're planning to do the next one maybe in a year or 2. NADA is yes, and then press release issued at least quarterly. We also do press release for CPI and the GDP, and then PPI. And the indicator here says no. So as you said, maybe, I don't know if it's coming from my end or it's coming from the system. There are other indicators, statistical literacy indicators. There are some indications there. But my concern actually has to do with the press releases, which we do quarterly for CPI, PPI, and we also do press release for the GDP. Thank you, and over.
Thank you, Emmanuel. I'm happy to come in on the first on the use of consumer price index. So that's a World Bank indicator. We will flag that issue back to the World Bank, but we update with an API directly from their database. Something to note is that they now switched from the statistical capacity index to the statistical performance index. So the latest time series of that is 2019, and then they will transfer to the new index. So as you said, we will flag it to the team of the World Bank. On the press releases, this is very useful for us. We usually collect them from the NSO website, whether they are published there, that's the definition. So we will get back to that and correct it accordingly. And we take a good note of your comments. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Once you go to the website, you see loads and loads of them.
Yes. Jandeswa, please, do you want to come in?
Yes, thank you. I'm finally on the same page as everybody. So just to show you, Julia, that I'm on the same page, I see that you say the statistical plan for South Africa is not funded. It is funded. We don't have an NSDS yet. We have a statistical plan that is managed completely by the NSO, and that one is fully funded. Maybe it could be a question of maybe there are things that we want to do that we cannot do, but in terms of what is on our work plan, that is funded. So we'll be going through all the indicators and give you feedback of if we think that there are some indicators that are not represented well. Thank you.
Thank you, Jandeswa. This would be very appreciated. I think with regards to the statistical plan, this is an important point. This is the SDG indicator. So the way that is something we would need, that would be very important to know, because then there's a problem with the instrument, which is the one with collaborated with UNSD. So we would be happy to follow up and get a review from you. Are there any other remaining hands? No, I think we're good.
No,
Can I ask a clarification on the statistical plan?
Yes.
The statistical plan. For instance, we have an NSDS, and out of the NSDS, we have the World Bank supporting us to implement some aspect of it. It's running. It became effective July 2020, and it will run till 2025. Can we take that as the plan funded?
If I can come in here, and then I think Philip, you can also maybe support this. So the question in the UNSD instrument survey asks if it's fully funded. So partially funded is not captured, although it's of course very relevant. And I know the colleagues work on it. So these kind of feedbacks are extremely valuable, you know, to understand to what extent we can capture them. But Philip, maybe you want to add to this point specifically.
Yes, thank you, Emmanuel. Thank you for raising that question. Actually, an NSDS which is fully funded means that you secured the budget for its implementation for the whole period. And I doubt if the World Bank will be financing the implementation of all activities. I think there are some that are funded by the government, of course, and other partners as well, but other activities also that are not funded. So it will be important to know, of course, the level of funding of the NSDS. It might be not fully funded, but also not not funded. I mean, it can be fully funded, partially funded, and not funded. So, and even if it is partially funded, we might also have the levels of how far it is. It can be funded maybe 10% or 85%. That will not be the same. So I think it's good to reflect on that and see how we can capture some of those details. And also in some details, maybe we might think about the type of funding. If you are fully funded by development partners, is that a sustainable way of funding the NSDS? I don't know. Maybe we might also capture the funding from development partners or donors and the funding from the government as well. So that can give a more clear picture on how sustainable the financing of the NSDS is. Thank you.
Thank you, Philippe. I think if there are no other questions, we could continue to exercise 2.
Yes, I have shared my screen. You should be able to see it. Do you confirm?
Yeah, we can see it.
Great. So, I mean, the rules of the game are the same, so please feel free to jump in, unmute yourself, or use the chat. This second exercise will be on the second facet of the monitor. So we have seen the country pages, and we invite you to explore them further, but here we want to give you also a taste of how the indicators page look like. So in order to do so, first, this exercise will aim to understand what can be found there. And we gave a small preview, but we want really would appreciate if you can put your hands on the field and understand with us better, and give us feedback that is more than welcome. And you'll see that in this through this exercise you'll understand and learn how to analyze an indicator and compare it, and look at the time trends, as was pointed out earlier, and compare it with other countries and other indicators. So in order to do so, we would kindly ask you to go back to the main page of the home page of the monitor. The link is again in the chat, and otherwise you can simply click on here on the left hand side, top left corner of the page you were at in the country page, and you will be redirected to the home page. And once you're there, we will be focusing on the middle panel, which is the indicator page section that will guide you and present you to the full list of indicators. So again, if you can raise your thumbs up, or just write on the chat when you are with me. Now this exercise will be quite prescriptive, so we have chosen an indicator that we will be focusing on, but again, we really welcome you to explore other indicators. This is done just in the interest of time, but and so that the approach will be the same, symmetric for any indicators you'll be interested in. So if you are all with me, by clicking on the red panel on indicators on statistical capacity, we would ask you to look for total commitments indicator. So this is an internal PARIS21 indicator, which belongs to the press report that is developed by PARIS21. And we would use that as an example to give you a taste of how an indicators page look like. You will just need to write and type total commitments or commitments, or and you'll see that we actually have two different indicators regarding the commitments, the support for statistics that you received. that are measured annually and are moving average of a 3 years period. Could you please give a sign if you can access this information? You can select total commitments annual and by simply clicking on this.
I think that looks good.
Great. So let's understand why we've chosen this indicator. So I said this indicator, and let's match it and map it with the metadata information that you'll be able to access in the indicator page. So the total commitment indicator is an indicator that measures the total support to development that is received by a country in a year. So this is why I said this is the annual version of this indicator, and this is in the metadata nomenclature. This is the definition that will be provided and you can access in the indicators page. As said, this is a PARIS21 indicator that collects the raw data and develops the indicator as such. So it's both the source and the dissemination agency. And it does so by collecting the amount of US dollars that are reported using two sources. So the creditor reporting system from the OECD and an internal PARIS21 survey that is sent to the donors that are not covered. As said, given that this is a PARIS21 indicator, we also provide additional information on the methodological background of this indicator, among which the interpretation that can facilitate how and what this indicator shows. And in particular, this allows for a comparison of the needs of countries and the progress that is done in order to implement the Cape Town Global Action Plan all over the world. So let's get into the more practical stuff by looking at how the indicator page looks like. So as you can see, and you should be all on this page right now, the homepage of the total commitments annual indicator is provides, of course, indeed the name and straight after a short definition. The words map is a snapshot of the most recent year, which is in this case 2017. There's a 3-year lag because of the computation and the collection of the data, and this is well noted and precise in the methodological background. And again, you can see that by hovering, and I invite you to do so to practice this, by hovering with your with the arrow over a country, you will be able to reveal the value of each single country. So far, we just provide by groups of quantiles the values of the indicator to facilitate a visual comparison, but by hovering over it, you can reveal the precise value that is provided in US dollars as current US dollars. There are no difficulties on this, let me underline that this allows for both an immediate and straightforward download of the PDF, so that you can straightforward use this image for your purpose and download the data. But the question that has already been raised, and I believe there's some common interest about this, is how about time trends? What do we know? This is just the most recent year. What happened before? And these are what the following slide covers, and this is the rest of the homepage. So if you just scroll down on the indicators page, you will reveal different graphs. And in particular, the time trends graph that shows the time series for each country and the associated value and how it evolved over time. So again, the rules of the game are the same. By hovering over each year for a country, you'll be able to reveal the precise value. And as usual, you can customize the choice of the countries that first you are interested in and the ones that you want to compare a country with. So I invite you and highly encourage you to explore this feature by clicking on this orange plus by adding a country, and there you'll be able to remove and add the countries at your preference. And you can also, as usual, download both the graph as such. So for interactive user experience and the underlying data. Do you confirm that you can access these features?
Their first positive reactions. Yeah.
Great, thanks. Thanks for the feedback. There's a hand raised, or
Yes, Paul is raising his hand. Paul, do you want to come in?
Yes. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Paul Okele from Uganda. I wanted to add my country so that I can compare the trends among other countries. But when I add my country, Uganda, I don't see the trends. I want to see how time period alongside other countries. Thank you.
yeah, so I can check that with you. Of course, the availability of the time trend relies on the availability of the underlying data. So it might well be the case that Uganda may have some missing values. Even though I'm doing that with you, I can also share my screen if you want, and on the browser. Actually, that may be easier, and you can tell me if there are some discrepancies in the. So as you can see, I've added Uganda here, which is in this dark pink, and I can reveal the time series from 2006 onwards for Uganda. Paul, do you confirm me that this is not what you have?
I think for me to be able to view Uganda, I need to log out of Uganda and probably log in as another country, then add Uganda, then I can be able to see. But sure. If I'm logged in as Uganda, I can't see that trends.
Yes, you're totally right. So let me underline that we because of the amount of countries all over the world, we provide a random sample of 5 countries that you see in my case are Maldives, Malta, Togo, Tonga, and Turks. And then I've added Uganda, and this is done from the user herself, right? So by clicking on this add country, you can follow me here, and you can see that if I type Uganda here, now I can select it or deselect it. And suppose I want to choose another country, I'll be just scrolling that down. And suppose I'll just pick Afghanistan, and you can see that it appears down below here. So my selection will be of 7 countries. And then by clicking on OK, then I will reveal all the countries altogether. And I can there customize and remove some countries. Suppose I don't want any more Maldives or Malta, and you can see that countries can be selected and unselected through this feature. Does that answer your question?
Yes, please. Yes, please. It does.
Thanks. All right. So we're heading towards the end of this second exercise and also of the time. Yes, I see a question from Josephine. Maybe we can, if that is related, we can just.
Yeah, when you get to that page, I just out of curiosity, I want to ask, there are some countries which is showing no data, and I'm looking at them, I'm like, is it because they are more like the donors?
Yeah, this is a very good point. We are actually working on this feature in the next version of the monitor that hopefully will be releasing in the next coming weeks. So as there's a difference, as you said, between the missing values that are due to ineligibility for receiving support and those that we don't know whether they received their amount. So we want to explore this difference by setting as missing values those for which are not eligible because they cannot belong to the set of eligible countries that would receive support for statistics indeed. So yeah, and this was shown also here. It's you can see that most of Europe and Northern America has no data, but it's rather no data because of non-eligibility than absence of data collection. Thanks for your point, and I hope I addressed it. This was something we will add, because it's I think it's very important to make sure that it's not because we can't collect the data, but because they're not eligible for having data points for this indicator. And this is something that we will also update in our metadata structure, which is the next and final point of this presentation. So just to underline the fact that if you're interested in understanding what this indicator is about, so again, it's their unit of measurement, how they are computed, where the data come from. All the indications are provided in the metadata, from the definition to the dissemination agency, the source, and most importantly, the methodological background, which again classifies the type of indicator and what the value means. Given again that it's a PARIS21 internal indicator, we also give more information. So for a deeper methodological background about this indicator, and if you will click on this more information, you'll be able to reveal that. Sorry. So this is something we have already gone through. So just to conclude on the methodology exploration, by clicking on more information, you'll see that you'll be able to access detailed information on the methodology of this indicator, such as the interpretation, what the indicator measures, what it means, how the data are collected, and how they are transposed from the raw data to the indicator construction, and finally the aggregation rule and some potential caveats that are very important for users. So I'll stop here, and I think that we are more than welcome any additional questions or feedback. Thanks for your attention.
Yeah, thank you very much, Guglielmo and Julia, for this very good presentation and very clear. I'm sure it's very interesting for countries to measure their statistical capacity through the proposed indicators, and you can see that there are further indicators that will be added in the future. So we are trying to be as exhaustive as possible to have a clear picture in most of the areas of statistical development. So we encourage you to go through your country page, provide any updates if you think that what is there is not updated. We will appreciate it very much. And also, please go ahead and suggest any indicators you think is important to be measured. And then we will continue communicating with you. You have seen that not only you can see the level of your statistical capacity, but you can compare your country with other regions. You can compare with other continents. You can compare with the world level. So this is really very important. And you will see that most of the indicators, actually, they are included in your NSDS implementation. So these linkages are very important. That's why we thought that bringing this type of products in this training will help us to understand the global picture of the statistical development and how you can include all of this in your planning process. So thank you very much. I have also I sent in the chat a request for countries to share with us their latest NSDS versions so that we can update this as well. So thank you very much in advance for that. I see South Africa. You have raised your hand. You have a question, Yandiswa.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Sorry to talk after you have summarized, but I just wanted to emphasize the question by Zambia. On when you hover over some countries, you see that there's no data, but over some, there is nothing. It doesn't say anything, whether there's no data. I know you said that you're still working on the metadata on saying which countries maybe should be included or not, but I was worried about that nothing. I thought it was my mistake. I kept clicking and clicking over South Africa and there was nothing. So maybe you could look at that as well. Thank you. This was very interesting and useful.
Thanks a lot. This is a very important remark. We will definitely take care of that. So usually I just cross-checked and you're totally right. So by hovering over South Africa, it is not revealed that it has no data. You can see that by comparing the color of the legend to what South Africa is colored by, but it should work also the hovering feature. So we will definitely take care of that. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you, all of you. This was really very interesting. And we look forward to continue updating this with your collaboration. Thank you very much. Thank you, Julia. Thank you, Guillermo, for a very nice presentation. We are now going to move to the next presentation, which is the last. And this, the last for today, because we still have another day to go. So this will be on the geospatial data integration in official statistics. I don't know if you can see my screen. Please let me know if you can see it.
Yes. Yes, we can see it.
Thank you. So for this session, we'll be talking about the integration of geospatial data and statistics. And I will talk about just an introduction on the guide that was developed. But I want to welcome Attila and Graham from Grid 3. Can you please introduce yourself and then we move ahead with the presentation. Graham, please.
Hi, hello everybody. Nice to be here. Yeah, and looking forward to a presentation and the discussions on this topic. So I'm the lead for training and capacity strengthening with Grid 3. I'm a part of FlowMinder in the UK, and I'll give an introduction to Grid 3 as part of my presentation. My colleague Attila is unfortunately delayed. He's going to be joining in a few minutes.
I'm already here, Graham.
Sorry, yes, okay, great. Over to you.
Yeah, maybe just to introduce myself. My name is Attila Lázár. I work for the University of Southampton and more specifically the World Pop Research Group. So we are one of the core partners of the Grid 3 program. And my unit is responsible for population estimation and characterization activities. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the questions at the end of the presentation. Thanks, and nice meeting you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Attila and Graham.
Sorry, Philippe.
Yes,
sorry,
I
should just mention there are various other colleagues from Grid 3 joining the call, but unless they want to jump in and say hi, we'll pass on, but they may come in on the discussion later.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and they are all welcome to the discussions for this session. Thank you very much, and dear colleagues, we will just go very quickly through this session. I will just introduce the guide on geospatial data integration, which is a guide that, as you can see, it's been developed by PARIS21 in collaboration with Statistics Sweden. This guide is yet to be published, but we expect to have it finalized and published by latest end of this month. We already have a very well advanced edited copy. And this guide intends actually to provide some step-by-step guidance to the NSOs, the National Statistical Systems, but also the agencies that are responsible for geomapping infrastructure in the countries. And it is oriented to support the low and middle income countries. So it is based on the requirements and recommendations that have been highlighted for the implementation of the Global Statistical Geospatial Framework, the GSGF, developed taking experience from the European countries. And also, we tried to make it very simple, step by step, to explain when, how, and what to do when you implement the geospatial integration, data integration in official statistics. And we tried to link this to the NSDS design and implementation process, identifying the entry points through the NSDS process. So as you have seen, we by going through other tools like ADAPT, we have tried to show what are the entry points. Also mainstreaming SHASA, we have tried to show the entry points through the NSDS process. Just to mention that the NSDS design process is a very important planning process for the national statistical systems and should take into consideration new or priority areas which needs to be strengthened throughout the implementation, the design and the implementation of the planning process. So this is just a conceptual illustration on the integration of geodata, geospatial data and statistics data. Just to mention that we usually have our data from statistical data, I mean, from the census, from the household surveys or economic business surveys, administrative records, civil registration, and other data sources. And we normally produce this through tables, statistical tables, but it is very important to notice that the geospatial data can be well developed and linked to the usual statistics data to produce more geo-enabled information that can help decision making. And this is key. And our colleagues from Grid 3, we go into more practical way to show how this can be combined and can help national statistical systems, national statistical offices to be much more relevant and fit for purpose to inform the decision making and service delivery at the low levels of the administration. I mean the level of communities. Now, this guide is a step-by-step guide, as I said, and it has 8 steps. I will go very quickly through it. The first step is to get the right people together and, of course, do the mapping. I mean, mapping the actors and also try to raise the awareness of this integration, the geospatial integration, geospatial data integration and official statistics, make the case why it is important and how it can be, it can help decision making to monitor much more the service delivery and create a good environment for collaboration. The step 2 is assessing and securing necessary resources. And here it is more the human resources what do you have compared to what you intend to produce, or how you intend to integrate the two set of information, and then identify the skills that and the capabilities that you need. And here you can see that we can link this step to using the capacity development 4.0 framework that we already presented in this training. The step 3 is assessing the technical infrastructure. This is extremely important as well. You should know what you have, what you don't have in terms of infrastructure before you can think about integrating the geospatial data and the statistical data. Step 4 is the inventory of fundamental geospatial data that exists and how you address the geocoding infrastructure, the safeguarding access to all scales. And this is extremely important, and it is explained actually in details in the guide. I'm not intending to disseminate the guide now. We will have time to disseminate it when it is already public. The step 5 is about setting a basic framework for geographies, of course, for the analysis and dissemination of the data. And here it is about how do you have your, for example, your boundaries and the coding system well built and agreed by all involved stakeholders, so you don't have problems when you integrate your data with boundaries that are not accepted by all, and then you create more problems than creating or providing solutions. Step 6 is to design a data management environment. And this data management environment will combine, of course, all the technical infrastructure we have we talked about, and how you georeferencing your data, and of course you need to train your people to manage the information, and how you intend to integrate, which level you intend to integrate your statistics, considering the geospatial data or geospatial information that you already have. Now, step 6 will deal with defining goals for your dissemination and identify the tools that you want to use. The tools that you will identify to use, of course, will depend on your goals of dissemination. Which level do you want to disseminate your data, and which kind of geospatial infrastructure do you have, and how do you want to link this to your data and indicators. And the last one is to use good practices and standards. And here it focuses more importantly on the interoperability of systems, because information will be coming from several sources. So you need, of course, to build a kind of viable interoperability between the systems. So these are the 8 steps that the guide provides more details. Once it is published, I would invite you to go through it, to read it, and provide any comments that you will find. Now, the last point is the entry points in the NSDS life cycle. Through all the steps that I have mentioned in the guide, there is a clear linkage which is already defined in the NSDS guidelines 3.0 in the website. But you will see that at each stage of the NSDS life cycle, you will need to involve the need to go, the need to integrate the geospatial data and the official statistics from the preliminary stage where you make the case, where you pitch the need to have an integration of geospatial data and the official statistics, to the design where you do your assessment and you include this component in your in defining your strategic objectives, and consequently define the actions in your action plans of what has to be done, and then comes the implementation of what you have already planned to integrate the geospatial data and your official statistics. So thank you very much. This is the brief introduction I wanted to make to this guide. Once it is finalized and published, we are happy to share it with you. And with this, I will give the floor to Graham to continue the presentation. Graham, we have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Philippe. Much appreciated. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Just one moment. Okay, you can see the title slide, I hope.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. Okay, yeah, thank you, Philippe, for that really useful introduction to the geospatial guide. I've been privileged to have a little look at that myself, and I have no doubt that it will prove to be an extremely useful and comprehensive resource for organizations who are going to start out or continue their transition to geospatial procedures. So whilst the guide and the NSDS sort of lay out in detail the kind of how to set out on that transition, I'd like to, in this brief time together, just focus a bit on the why. And why would you do that with a few, and to do that with a few visual examples, hopefully building the case for geospatial integration, looking at applications, tools, and the data itself. So. Yeah, so I was planning to just give a brief outline of Grid 3. I don't know how much those in the audience might know about our program. And then just walk through briefly trying to explore the power of geospatial data and the central role that it's starting to play in government organizations and countrywide sort of planning and intervention. And then we'll look at some specific applications, primarily from Grid 3. In how the data is being developed and applied. So, okay, Grid 3 is currently engaged with many different countries in Africa. Our partnership consists of CESIN as a managing partner from Columbian University and 3 core implementing partners. So that's UNFPA, as you know, the agency responsible for supporting countries in census throughout, really, and WorldPop at the University of Southampton, essentially the experts in all aspects of population modeling. And finally, ourselves, FlowMinder Foundation, the lead partner for capacity building and mobility analysis. Just a final mention, COVID-19 accelerated a number of collaborations we have with organizations and groups, helping us to respond quickly and effectively to the new terrain, the new priorities. So we're privileged to work with organizations such as GPSDD, Esri, Frame, Novelty, GeoBoundaries, and Premise. Okay, so in a nutshell, our vision and our mission, essentially Grid 3 combines the expertise of these partners and other partners from government, from countries, the United Nations, academia, and the private sector to create relevant geospatial solutions based on each country's capabilities and development needs. So yeah, just a brief kind of outline of our sort of services or products, if you like. Grid 3, for those who don't know how it's defined, georeferenced infrastructure and demographic data for development. So we work with countries to generate, validate, and use geospatial data on population, settlements, infrastructure, and administrative boundaries. But equally important is, you know, as well as creating and generating that data and those techniques, is strengthening capacity of our in-country partners to use that data and to use it to the greatest optimal output, really, and gain as much insight as we can from it. So that's sort of my particular field. Okay, so a few slides now on just trying to express maybe the power of geospatial data and the technologies for mapping all aspects of population, really. Yeah, so here are some questions that geospatial data and technologies enable us to ask, really, and to answer. So, you know, straightforward things like identification, you know, what is the name of these settlements, these cities, these areas, these other features. All of that information is built into the database of the GIS. But then, of course, we can go on to ask, you know, highlight the schools, the public health facilities, other features of interest, looking at proximity, how many of those features might be within a certain proximity of a settlement or major roads, you know, all of those location-based queries. We can start to perform spatial analysis. So are there patterns in the building footprints that suggest different types of settlement? So, you know, powerful algorithms now look at the roof type and terrain, the roof type and color, texture, the patterns, and enable us to categorize that using models. We can also ask questions about sort of change over time. You know, highlight the areas where new housing has been built in the last 10 years, but importantly, sort of quantifying that. So what's the footprint of those new areas? What's the rate of change? We can also then ask about, we can start modeling scenarios and making predictions. So what would be the effect of a doubling of the population on the water quality of a river, for example? You know, the accurate overlay of extremely varied types of data for a given area enables these sort of cross-thematic questions, if you like. A final one is a network analysis, you know, routing and questions like that. What's the shortest point on foot between two given points from town A to village B, or from the port to the nearest district? So ultimately, you know, geospatial data is a fantastic aid to decision making. Yeah, so just a quick slide to emphasize how spatial referencing of data and information, you know, changes the game so much, really. So this is, I think, quite a nice example of a traditional map that's been built up through participatory consultation and development with local people. There's often wildly varying interpretations of the landscape and features on the landscape, and so the end result can be markedly different from the accurate geospatial, the accurate features on the ground and their true geospatial locations. So, you know, providing this common geography is one of the fundamental principles outlined in the geospatial guide, a common basis for us all and a hierarchy of areas for us all to build on. Okay, so I've mentioned geospatial data and technologies, that phrase quite a bit, but clearly what I'm talking mostly about is GIS. And so quick sort of definition, GIS is a database combined with a visual map interface. So you're combining the analytical querying capabilities of databases with the visual interpretation and the elements of geography and spatial proximity. Used to map and analyze objects and events that happen on the Earth, whether those are discrete features like buildings, species, or indeed people, as well as, of course, processes like climate change, you know, travel time, vaccination coverage, of course, you know, it's not limited at all. GIS is a toolbox that can be applied to all these sectors. And then the final point to make is the 4 elements of a GIS. So hardware, software, data, and people. So hardware and software is fairly obvious, of course. Data is, you know, we live in a rapidly expanding global library of data, but it's the final element, the people, that I wanted to stress. So when we're going about capacity strengthening and learning, a key element is developing critical thinking about spatial issues and spatial problems. And it's that critical thinking which really makes the GIS operate effectively. It's you know, it's the glue that holds everything together. So I would put the person, the GIS user, analyst at the very center. Excuse me one moment. Right, I'm just going to quickly display these because I notice time is running quite rapidly. But having talked about the mechanism of GIS, what's important is to note the outputs. You know, so here are some outputs, some from WorldPop, some from Grid3, malaria prevalence. You know, incredibly useful, incisive, detailed mapping down to often 100-meter scale, 100-meter resolution. In the middle there we have births. The WorldPop website has WorldPop and Grid3 have a wealth of data, really, not just population, but across demographics and population characteristics, births included. And then another map from Resource, rural mapping in Tanzania, just a nice sort of visual impact there. And then these 2 final examples, the probability of receiving postnatal care within 48 hours of delivery by district. So this one, as with many, relies on the detailed population kind of input data and aggregating up to these areas, and then combining it with information about maternal health care. And the final example is the internal migration flows, mobility, you know, we're getting towards mobility. This is a WorldPop map, but yeah, mobility is an area that everyone's interested. FlowMinder particularly is developing lots of data around mobility, around mobile call data records, fully anonymized, but enabling us to really get a much more detailed picture of movements over weeks, seasons, hours, you know, increasingly. And then just to round off this section then, a nice phrase which I agree with Jack Demoland, the president and founder of Esri, who produce ArcGIS. So the application of GIS is limited only by the imagination of those who use it. So it's the analyst and the critical thinking at the center of it. Okay, so now for some applications and case studies. So I'm going to run through initially first two of the core data products, settlements, locality information, and model population estimates, and then looking at some applications in Ghana and what we call the pre-EA tool. So locality mapping can really improve decision making when used with other data such as subnational boundaries, points of interest, population, health center information. You know, identifying rural settlements that can get, you know, left off the map. And that's one of our sort of key drivers, of course, is leaving no one behind, leaving no one off the map. Yeah, and identifying vulnerable populations is another sort of key driver, of course. So Grid3 supports the cleaning, creation, updating, and management of this form of geospatial data. So just to define settlement extents for a moment, we're talking about polygons which delimit the built-up areas of a locality. So automated methods. So yeah, we essentially generate these boundaries from building footprint data, which itself is remotely sensed. And we're able to categorize the types of settlement into small urbanized areas, small settlements, and hamlets. So how might we use that data? Well, for example, essentially settlement and locality data provides context and frames other data. So, you know, in this example, we've overlaid settlement information in the purple and the orange over on top of high resolution population data. So each one of those grid cells has a value that's an estimate of the count of the number of people essentially. Using tools in the GIS, you're able to aggregate those values so that you get a count for each one of those settlement types. And you can see the values that have been generated through that process on the right-hand side. Another sort of key activity within Grid 3 is boundary harmonization. So, you know, there's many reasons why boundary harmonization is important. I've referred previously to it's one of the key principles in the geospatial guide. It's common geography, common baseline. Fundamentally, I think gaps and overlaps between different administrative levels can significantly affect analyses. So, you know, calculations of numbers of people or some other variable, you know, if you don't have an accurate aligned baseline, then you're going to have double counting, over estimation, underestimation. So harmonization of boundaries is also a necessary condition for creating the gridded population data that we produce as well. So yeah, Grid 3 basically applies automated processes to produce this harmonization. So it's yeah, it can be fairly rapidly generated. Just briefly, we also curate and compile points of interest data set. There are so many providers and sources of points of interest data. And so therefore it comes in all sorts of different formats. So we will standardize that and create essentially a single database, aligned and consistent. You know, the power of POI data really is that, you know, an individual mailbox location is perhaps not of interest, but once you combine that with all the other categories and scale it up, it's a fantastic guide to population distributions and patterns. Okay, we now come to perhaps the most, you know, the core Grid 3 data product, I would say. Perhaps what drove the process and drove the program under which we're now running. So in a nutshell, gridded population data are estimates of population for could be for an entire country in grid squares as small as a city block. So 100 meters by 100 meters is the highest resolution data we create. Sorry, excuse me. So there are many reasons why for some areas there is really not even an approximate idea of the numbers of people that reside there, you know. It could be conflict, access, simply resourcing a census in some places, of course. So we use a statistical model informed by many types of remotely sensed information to predict how many people are in each one of those cells. I'd like to just stress at this point that it's really important to stress modeled estimates are no substitute for census. You know, there's absolutely no census, no replacement for the detail you get by sending out teams, going house by house and getting that incredibly vital information. And that is one of the core vital inputs to our process. However, you know, census is a big operation that occurs often decadally, and therefore the modeling inputs can really help within that process to inform estimates and to help the planning, you know, and all of this. So let's have a look at an example. Here we have a satellite image from Nigeria, and if you can just make out faintly, there is a boundary here, a black boundary, which is a pre-existing sort of census block, census area, administrative area. If I overlay the gridded population data on top, you can then immediately contrast what would be the conventional representation of the population here, though, you know, a single figure for that black bounded area. You can contrast that to the variability that you get with gridded data, and that's its powerful kind of asset, is that it draws out the fine-grained variation in space for population distributions. And then if we zoom out to city level here in Nigeria, you get a sense of the detail and the enormity of this data, really. So couple of advantages I'd like to sort of point out here. I've mentioned about aggregation, so you can overlay any sort of boundaries, of course, and aggregate those individual grid cell values, which is fantastically useful in itself. The existence of a consistent grid cell, let's say 100 meters by 100 meters, that provides a consistent framework for analysis. So you can overlay data from unlimited numbers of other themes, and drill down through and analyze your area that way. It also means, because we have data as a consistent grid cell across countries and continents, we can compare. It's a basis for comparison. Okay. Yeah. And just a quick slide to sort of emphasize how the model is able to clearly differentiate between residential and industrial areas. So industrial areas in the center, and then the higher populated areas down towards the southern area, symbolized in the orange to red. And it's done this by building covariate data into the model, all of those other data that inform where people ultimately settle. And by doing so, it's been able to isolate that low populated area in the center. Okay, so how might we apply gridded population data? I mean, it's used by so many different sectors and industries, of course, but looking at census planning, using regularly updated gridded population data in the way I've just described, we're able to estimate EA populations that we might expect. So in preparation for a census, we have a much more informed basis. So populations change, movements occur very rapidly, and if we're using an old framework of EAs, we might find wildly varying numbers of people, and that then of course has a direct implication on how easy or not it is to enumerate that area. So it really does guide the planning process. We can also use it within census to inform kind of mid-year estimates and mid-decade census estimates. Other sort of examples here. Let's look at other ways we can apply it. So in terms of urban connectivity and mobility, we have here a 300-meter buffer zone around a main arterial road created in GIS, from which we can then aggregate those population values, as I've mentioned. We can then ask lots of questions. So, is this main arterial road capable of meeting transportation needs of a changing population? Let's calculate the density of commercial buildings within that buffer zone. What's the rate of increase in that commercial district? Is that road able to accommodate increased commercial pressure? Other questions, what's the impact on health from air pollution in the vicinity of this main road? The questions are unending, really, that you can start to drill in. Okay, so having talked about the data and its application, I put one slide up in here just to unpick, if I can briefly, the method in which the data is created. I won't be able to do it justice in 30 seconds, of course, and my colleague Attila would be the authority here to talk to. But ultimately, what we use primarily in Grid 3 this bottom-up population model method. That's one of a whole range of different modeling approaches. But the bottom-up method takes local detailed information, so it could be from household surveys, a microcensus. So we've got pockets of very fine detailed information. We then load into the model covariate information, data sets that I've described, which are able to train the model, inform the model of where people are likely to reside or where they're not. And that information, that statistical variation, will enable the model to create an estimate in each one of the grid cells. So that's very overly brief description of the model. Okay, yeah, so an example here of a tool that we've developed and with, I think, particular relevance for sort of census operations. what we call the pre-enumeration area tool is an automated method of generating individual enumeration areas, and exactly how and where those areas are constructed can be constrained by rules and constraints set by the user. So an area must not cross a river or a particular road, or an area must not have greater than a certain building density, must have, must not cross into forest areas, these kind of rules. So this method is capable of producing pre-enumeration areas for an entire country, potentially, providing essentially a national sampling frame there. An important point to stress here is that we always refer to these outputs as pre-enumeration areas. So it is a modeled output. There hasn't been, a human being hasn't sort of looked and assessed each one of those areas. And that validation, not necessarily area by area, but that some form of validation is really essential. So, but in countries where there's really a blank canvas, it's a fantastic starting point. So, what are the challenges of, why is this tool necessary, essentially? What is the issue here? So traditional manual creation of EAs is extremely resource intensive. We could be talking about tens of thousands of individual EAs. And typically a lot, these days still, many of them are being manually created. And that brings with it a whole range of issues about alignment and adjustment, adjacency between EAs, etc. EAs also need to be, rather than just being created, they need to be regular updated and corrected, so there's a great resource drain on organizations. Also, for certain areas where, there are restrictions on accessing certain areas to try and inform those EA maps. So, this is a basis for, this is a starting point. I think I've already mentioned these points really, but a sort of summary, like I said, potentially creating a comprehensive national sampling frame of pre-enumeration areas with user-defined rules and constraints. Pre-EAs, like I said, are a starting point. They must be checked and validated. So this tool has been under sort of long development by primarily our WorldPop colleagues. Okay, and again, just to very briefly run through what is quite a complex program tool, really. We're taking input data, and again, that high resolution data is really crucial, combined with data on roads, rivers, protected areas, etc., etc. That provides a basis for establishing constraints, rules on where these blocks must be generated. And so we split the defined area and build those blocks, and then run those rules, run the tests. Is there no more than 700 people, for instance, in a block, and then depending on the results of those, they can be merged and split further, and you end up with a baseline set of areas. And just a quick sort of visual display of some of the outputs then. So, down to large scale detail in Niger and Zambia, up to the whole country in Paraguay and Burkina Faso. So I'm not personally particularly involved in this tool, I would like to stress, but my colleague again, Attila, will answer any questions, I'm sure, on this one. Okay, so a final case study that I wanted to talk about now, and I'll do so as quick as I can. So GIS for census modernization in Ghana. So this is an engagement that we've had and continues currently with Ghana Statistical Services. So GSS approached and requested technical support and training in geospatial data processing and analysis. Essentially, they're in transit. They're in the process of transition to geospatial and introducing lots of these new technologies and techniques and data. And so there's a whole there's various different threads of our kind of training and support. But I wanted to focus on just one, which is known variously, but normally the hard to count indicator tools. So hard to count enumeration area indicators is a means of estimating for GIS the enumeration effort that might be required from their field staff, essentially. So taking a step back for a moment, what was the problem here? What's the underlying problem? Well, reports from the field were that people were being missed by enumerators, suggesting that there could be issues with the area extents on the current maps. The problems could be many, extremely varied, and it could vary from one area to another. Too many buildings, too many people, complex terrain, flooding, mobile phone coverage, all sorts of different issues. The solution that was developed, and this was led primarily by Flowminer colleagues, is what we call the hard to count indicator tools, which are run from GIS, and they produce maps presenting red, amber, green status for each different EA. So a red is a red flag, obviously. Now this is just an indication because you could have 30,000 EAs, and so it is simply a means of being able to filter down, being able to focus down to some which could cause real issues in the field and problems for teams. Yep. So this is the current range of indicators organized into 3 different categories: geometry, accessibility, and population. For each indicator, a difficulty score is calculated, and then the indicator is mapped to a red, amber, green status. It's built in ArcGIS Model Builder with Python, but the nice thing here to stress, and also I should stress for the previous tools, the pre-EA tools, that these have been, that they're exposed to users as a nice user-friendly interface. So an interface with drop-down options and tick boxes. So you don't need to code, command line coding to run these tools. They're user-friendly. There's a growing range of indicators reflecting the clear fact that there are so many different reasons why enumerators cannot reach an EA. So we're continuing the engagement in Ghana, and there's ongoing engagements in other countries now. Looking into flooding is an area, interesting one, and rural access, and mobile phone data coverage I mentioned as well. Clearly an issue if you have a digital data collection process method. Final slide just on these, because it's a nice visual slide. Tree cover is clearly an important factor, making it difficult to navigate around an EA. So you could have what seems like a very low population, and it should be straightforward to enumerate, but if the terrain causes problems, then it could be as difficult as a densely populated zone. Okay, I think I am a little over time, apologies. So this is the last slide now. So just recap on a couple of points. So this whole process of geospatial integration, building the structures and the protocols and the regimes is a long process, of course, but I think it's important to remember that developments occur incrementally. There are little innovations, little quick wins, which can reap rapid benefits, So I think those need to be explored further. You can please explore our data, grid3.org and worldpop.org. There is a beta version of our data repository for Grid3, which is very soon to be released, I think. So you can look out for that, in which pools all of the various types of data we have. But worldpop.org is a repository for all of the wider population data themes. So please explore those. And then final point, and it probably warrants another presentation really, but in Grid3 we are running currently training programs. The primary method of that is using our learning management system. It's an online virtual college, if you like, in which we engage with learners in different parts of the world and share materials and methods and techniques for learning. So please explore that. There's a good write-up on there at learn.grid3.org. Finally, any questions if we have time for any, of course. I hope so.
Thank you very much, Graham, for this great presentation.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it has really a lot of materials, I think, and it covers a lot of things. Very interesting area, especially very interesting for national statistics systems, but also and particularly the national statistical offices that can use the highlighted methods, but specifically the GIS to produce more accurate but also updated information at very low levels of the communities. And this actually makes it more important for data to be used for planning and service delivery. So what Grid 3 is doing, I think it is already a very good value added to what the statistical offices are already doing. So it's a very good work, and I think our participants from the National Statistical System here have a lot of questions, a lot of interest. I should mention here that we tried to combine a lot of things in this session, but we'll be happy to go into more details in specific trainings if there is a request, maybe to just train people on how concretely this can be done. When you mention the population estimates, I think this is a key area where statistics offices wants to engage because censuses are only produced after 10 years, every 10 years. So when you don't have a administrative system which is very accurate, then these are some of the methods that can be used to estimate the population over time, and can also be used to include other dimensions like education indicators, health, and so on and so forth. So I will just hand over to the participants to ask questions. I don't know if Atili, you would like to add something before we receive some questions. Colleagues, feel free to raise your hand. Feel free to send any question in the chat, and Graham and Atili will be happy to answer.
Let's jump straight in, I suggest, to the questions. No further comments for now.
Thank you. Any question? I noted that there are case studies from Nigeria, from Zambia, from Ghana. There might be others, of course, and the national statistical offices from those countries are present here. Please do share experience if you do like on how you use this, and maybe how other countries also can use the solutions that were presented here. And I would also like to mention that most of the countries are now preparing to go for their population census. I think Ghana is already planning to do the enumeration soon if they are not doing it already. And the point on the pre-enumeration areas, this is really a critical issue and a statistical infrastructure for most of the NSOs, which can serve not only for the census enumeration, but for a sampling frame. And when this is well done, well digitalized, I think this is a great value added for most of the surveys and the sector censuses like agriculture and business surveys and censuses that can be conducted by national statistical offices and other stakeholders, I mean the MDAs from the national statistical system. So please, there is a question.
Philip, there is a question in the chat already.
Yes, please.
About if you want me, I can start the answer for that question.
Mm-hmm. Please go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So thank you for the question. So in the chat, Fabrice asking in the chat, when has Grid 3 started development? So just to give a little bit of brief history. So Grid 3 program started officially about 3 years ago, but actually the projects before that led to this activity started way earlier. So initially, WorkPop, UNFPA, and FlowMinder engaged with Afghanistan government, supporting them with their population estimates. But there were also activities happening in Nigeria in relation to polio campaigns. But the Grid 3 program officially started roughly 3 years ago, and we initially engaged with 5 countries: Nigeria, Zambia, Mozambique. It skips my mind. DRC, I think.
Yeah.
And one more. I don't remember. I have to admit, from the origin, I was not part of the program at that time. But that's when we started working with governments and statistical offices. So just to flag that we work with governments, so we don't work independently. We set up the activities together with government priorities and according to government expectations. And although we create the population estimates, for example, my group, these are not considered official unless the government wants to adopt them. So these are considered as operational data sets that might be useful for a vaccination campaign. But we ourselves don't consider them official until the government decides to adopt them fully and use it in other purposes as well. I can see a hand up there, so maybe this is time for the second question.
Yes, please, Emmanuel from Ghana, please go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you. It's actually not a question. You mentioned Ghana as a case in point, and I just want to confirm that indeed we had a Grid 3 coming to assist us with digitizing our enumeration area maps. Until that, we were using the analog. You go to the field and you do drawing using your hands. And gracefully, we've been able to go through. We now have a fully digitized enumeration area maps. And the census, we have, as I would say, kick-started. Listing of the structures started on the 13th of this month. So we are about 4 days through the listing of the structures. 27th June is the census night, and then actual enumeration will start on the 28th. I would say for now, we are yet to know after going through the listing to see whether the digitized map actually did help in terms of identifying the enumeration areas, and we'll be happy to share our experiences after the entire process is over. Thank you. We appreciate Grid 3 so much, and we look forward to further future collaboration. Thank you, and over.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Really great to hear from you, and we really appreciate it. So I was in Ghana myself for some time, and worked hard with your whole team, and it was a great positive process. So it's really great to have that feedback, and thank you. And yeah, we'll look forward to the feedback around the hard to count tools, and that's so useful as we refine the tools and improve them. There's modifications that can be made for sure. Thanks. And best wishes to everyone in GSS.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Manuel, and thank you, Graham, for this. I don't know if there is any other question. Otherwise, if Nigeria is still connected, maybe you can share your experience as well, while others are thinking about other comments, other questions. And please don't hesitate as well if you would like to know about what Grid 3 can do further to support the digitalization and of your EAs or other methods like estimating the population at very low levels of your communities, and why not going further, not only estimating the population and combining also, as we were talking this morning, combining also the other data, that other statistics that you are producing from surveys in other areas, and make it, combine it, integrating it in the geo information that is produced. So please go ahead. I don't see Nigeria. I think they have disconnected. Good. So I think there's no further questions. I will give the floor back to Attili and Graham for further comments on this, and then we will close the session.
Okay, thank you. Well, once again, it's great to be a part of this. It's an area that I'm very keen to see develop, this transition of the organizations into geospatial sort of procedures and methods, and it's not without its challenges, and it will be, the road could be bumpy, but it's such a valuable process and holds such enormous promise. So it's a good thing to be a part of, and the community that's building around this process is really encouraging. I think now we're competing with lunchtime for most people, and that's always a difficult competition to win. So Attila, any final remarks?
Yeah, maybe just a final remark for me. So thank you very much for inviting us to give this presentation. It will be our pleasure to support you with your needs. Just to highlight that Grid 3 is customizing the activities and the methods to the needs, what you have. So we have custom designed population models. We can build custom training courses if resources allowing it, and we have the skills and expertise for that. And as Graham said, these geospatial techniques has unlimited uses. So the price is big. You can really benefit from building the data sets, good quality, regularly updated data sets that you use, and also the skills. We are really happy to support you with capacity strengthening activities to get you started, or work with you to create a product or analysis that you are interested in. So that's all I wanted to say. If you have any questions later on, please drop us an email. So at the presentation, there is a training at grid3.org, or if you just visit grid3.org website, there are contact information there when you can reach us, and we will be replying promptly. Thanks again, and have a great lunch.
Thank you very much, Attili. Thank you very much, Graham, for this great presentation. If you can share the email contacts in the chat, that would be great. And we are happy to continue this partnership with Grid 3, with STATAFRIC, African Union Commission, and also UNECA and the African Development Bank, working on strengthening national statistical systems in the continent. So we will continue to work together and see how with all countries and economic, I mean, the regional economic communities, we can work all together to strengthen much more the statistics systems in the continent. So thank you very much. Don't hesitate to send any email to the contact that I shared already by Attili and Graham, and we will be happy to come back to you. So thank you very much, all of you, and bon appetit. I think we kept you too long. And please reconnect tomorrow, same time. That will be the last day of our 4 days training. Be on time as usual. And that will be the last day. And I think this session was very interesting to all of us, although it is very technical the whole day, indeed. But we are happy to go further into more detailed training, separate modules, separate trainings, if you think it can help countries. Thank you very much. Bon appetit, and bye-bye to all of you, and see you tomorrow.
Perhaps one day we'll meet together and all discuss, in person. One day.
Sure.